Catus Maximus here. This is a short video about the second generation GM powertorque impact universal joints. I was noticing that in the store that they look different than the old ones, and I did have the old ones. They're both the same part number, GM 9087s. Unfortunately, I'm making this video to tell you that the second generation one I think they made some changes to it and it doesn't run as smoothly as the earlier generation one. And these are kind of interesting because they pull out, so that these type of universal joints that can be run straight, or you can pull them out. They're a little bit awkward, and then they use the hex ball drive, which a lot of people like, and I can understand that. You know, pin drive has always been the standard for impact just because they run really smoothly, and they work in high grit environments because of the nature of the pin drive. It tends to work the grit out of the socket, or out of the joint, where these tend to get just a little bit more grit built up into them. But as I've used this just a little bit, initially it was a little bit gritty, but it's actually smoothed out pretty good. So I definitely approve of this design. I really like the idea of it because many pin drives, there's actually SKs would stamp the side of the socket where the pin is, so they wouldn't have this extra ring. But many pin drive impact sockets have the retention ring, which of course makes the socket just a little bit wider and sometimes doesn't fit into as tight of spaces. And so these, hex drive ones, and there's some cruciform drive ones as well, they're just a little bit narrower of a body. So apparently, and I'm not exactly sure why, I don't know if it was just too easy for this to go in and out, or maybe the little extra snap ring that's down lower in it that kind of retains this was wearing out, but they changed the design. It's a little bit taller. It's definitely a lot more stiff of a detent. And then what I was noticing in here is if we rotate it around, we can find that they actually put in a detent ball. You can just see it right there. Now you can see it a little better. So what they've done is they've removed the internal snap ring, and then they've drilled out and put in a ball detent just the same as what holds on the socket. Unfortunately, I think that causes an issue. I don't think it does cause an issue, because every time it goes around and rolls over that ball detent, it kind of gets this little hump, and I'll show you what I'm talking about here. There we go. So it's kind of funky. Usually if you want to use it as a universal, some of the issues with these, of course, you are using it, you accidentally get it just a little bit too straight, and then it goes straight on you, and then you try to pull it out, and then of course the whole socket comes off. So these things are kind of gimmicky, but I kind of like them just because I like to collect tools, and I kind of think it's an interesting idea and some kind of only real useful in some specific situations. But unfortunately, when you're going across that ball detent, it kind of has this whole lump action to it. And half the times I'm using these isn't with an impact, it's just the fact that they are constant velocity. And so you just do it because they don't bind up and they really deliver the power well. And this thing just kind of bumps around, is just a little bit rough. You probably wouldn't notice it too much on an actual impact, but if you're using these by hand, you really notice it. That's rough. The old one that I thought was rough is totally smooth compared to the new one. I really don't like that. The old one is just so much better just turning it. And that was, of course, always the best thing about these old pin drives, is they may not be quite as heavy duty, but man, they really are pretty low friction. A little bit of oil in them, and they just run super duper well. Pretty hard to beat the pin drive ball socket style, just for absolute smoothness of action. Anyway, I'll go ahead and end the video there. That was just what I wanted to point out, is they moved from an internal ring because obviously they had some issues, or maybe they just changed vendors. Who exactly knows? But their new solution is much stiffer. It kind of it wants to stay out more, so maybe they kind of did that so you wouldn't accidentally be pushing it in so easily. Unfortunately, because of that little ball, detent ball, wherever it was, there it is, it makes it a much rougher operation. And they still have the rear spring. Impact sockets have a spring inside them just to keep them from wanting to just flop around. And so with the ball detent and the tension spring, this thing is really just pretty stiff and then lumpy. It's just, they went downhill, unfortunately. Trying to solve one problem, they created two more. So I just wanted to do a little quick review, updating that, and and always like it when I get to do comparisons of different generations of the same tool. Usually they go forward, but in my opinion, you know, even though it won't compress and collapse quite as easily under use, the sacrifice of having a really rough action totally takes away from that. Anyway, I really appreciate everybody who's been watching and subscribing and commenting. I definitely read all the comments, and I've been working on getting back to more and more of them, but I really do appreciate them. And if you haven't subscribed to the Catus Maximus channel, please do. Until next time, Catus Maximus out.